Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the World Football Summit 2018. Bienvenidos de nuevo a este World Football Summit 2018. Entonces, la próxima mesa se llama Del terreno de juego a la industria del entretenimiento. Hemos hablado de las raíces de la palabra fútbol, pero ¿qué es el fútbol realmente? Hoy en día, ¿qué es principalmente el fútbol? ¿Es un deporte? ¿Es un negocio? ¿O es parte de la industria del espectáculo? Tenemos invitados varias partes para abordar este tema. So we have already talked about the roots of the word football, but what about the semantics? What about the meaning? How would you describe, how would you define football in this day and age? Is it a sport still at its roots? Is it a business? Is it potentially entertainment? And maybe the answer lies somewhere in between. We have a very varied panel of guests to take on this next roundtable. I am particularly interested in this myself as a presenter, as a journalist, because of course we straddle these different lands ourselves. And we have top speakers to bring on stage for you in literally a moment's time. So let's introduce them to you. Please welcome to the stage, por favor, demos la bienvenida a nuestro moderador, our moderator, founder and CEO of Rebel Ventures, Craig Howe. With him, Luis Correia, CEO and founder at Polaris Sports. Alongside Luis, Raquel Braun, Senior Director of Business and Legal Affairs at Fox Sports. And finally, Tom Thirlwall, CEO of Copper 90. Please give them a very warm round of applause.
Through the smoke.
Unfortunately, we are one person down. TJ Adeshola of Twitter could not make it. Unfortunately, there were some complications with his flights, but believe me, you are in very, very safe hands indeed. And we will give you the floor. Thank you very much indeed. Craig, it's all yours.
Welcome, everybody. Bienvenidos. Glad to be here this morning for the intersection of football and entertainment. My name is Craig Howe. I'm the CEO and founder of a digital strategy agency called Rebel Ventures. We specialize in sports digital transformation and, more importantly, the monetization of sports digital transformation. I think we're all really lucky in this room because they did a great job curating three people that have completely different points of view on the intersection of football and entertainment. Given that we have such a short period of time, I'd love to get right into it. Luis, you run Polaris, which has the digital and social rights for some small athletes in football that people might know, Cristiano Ronaldo, David De Gea, James Rodriguez, Diego Costa, to name a few. I'm sure, I don't know if everyone out there saw this, but on this month's cover of The Hollywood Reporter, there was a shot of LeBron James and his whole company uninterrupted, and the headline read, "LeBron takes Hollywood." And I think as you look in your world and you see athletes that are pushing really hard to become their own brands and their own media companies, how are you sort of advising and steering your clients in that direction?
The American way of doing it, like creating an own company and focusing on entertainment, at this point at European football is not possible. In the United States, you have in mostly sports 4 months off season, which allows to basically think and do everything they want. But in football, the competition is always running. So you have 10 months competition, 1 month preparation, and 1 month holidays. And I think it's one of the big advantages of football and on the leadership as a global sport is the fact that it's always something going on. Always games, always competitions, and in the off-season you have the transfer market who gets the fans hooked. On the other side, you are speaking about extremely competitive talent. So these guys really want to win everything. They want to win every match, every tournament. They want to score in the next game, and that's what makes them usually popular. On the other hand, football players at the top level are more popular than anyone else in the world. So they don't just compare themselves to the top of all the sports, but they are on the top of the celebrities, of the influencers. So They have a social media following which is huge, which is global, and which is very appealing to young generations. So, although they don't really go for the traditional way, okay, I'm in sports, and I'm on entertainment separately, they are a source of content. And being a source of content, they are somehow entertainers. So, in one hand, because their performance on the pitch, on the other hand, because they are role models for kids who now have interest in what they do, in how they prepare, how is their life. And since football players are young guys, they appeal to the next generations. Then some of them are more business focused. Some of them are more, they just want to share what they do for a living. So the way sportsmen in football become entertainers is very much on their own way, but it's definitely a way that is being explored. There are several platforms of sharing content. There are a lot of ways to try to be. It's a way to be closer to the fans, because it's a new phenomenon now that they don't speak only to people who can watch the games live and can feel part of the show, but they have a lot of away fans who want to be linked with them, and social media is the right tool for that communication.
Fantastic. Tom, just a follow-up question for you on that one. You obviously are the voice of the fans at Copa 90. Anything to build on what Luis just said in terms of how you guys think about athletes?
Well, only violent agreement, really, which is never good on a panel like this. Yeah, I mean, clearly we're living in an age of the kind of megastar football talent. And, you know, for us as Copa 90, we set our stall out at launch to tell the stories outside of the 90 minutes that make the 90 minutes matter more, which meant that we were kind of nothing to do with the action on the pitch and everything to do with what the players are doing outside of the game, fan culture, you know, series from comedy to factual entertainment to documentary or what have you. But for me, it's an extraordinary era for the types of companies that you have here on stage to be operating in the world of football, from, you know, the size and scale of the likes of Fox to Polaris with some of the most incredible players on their roster, and then us coming at it from a kind of non-rights-based media business. I think that says a lot about where this game and where media is evolving.
Cool, thank you. Raquel, you come from the epicenter of entertainment at Fox and Fox Sports. Your network has created some of the best live programming around sports. You do pregame, you do postgame, you have athletes in your TV shows, you have so much going on, probably a lot you can't even tell us about. Knowing that now we're entering an era where content is consumed in so many different environments and created for so many environments, what do you sort of see as the future? I know it's a really heavy question. As the future of content and entertainment.
If there's anything I've learned, it's that predicting the future, especially in this business, none of us can do. And I think I look back to, you know, less than a decade ago, we were trying to figure out how to cover a cell phone as a way to watch content, and here we are, and how quickly that's changed. So I think for us, it's more about the experience. You know, we don't know what the platforms are going to look like, you know, in 3, 5, 10 years. So what can we do now that keeps the viewers coming to Fox to watch our content? And so for us, it's creating the best experience, both on linear television and on digital. And we do that by delivering great content and innovative content and giving our fans, our viewers, you know, a different perspective and a view outside of what they're just seeing in a normal 90-minute match. For example, this past summer while we were in Russia, we had Rachel Bonetta, who is one of our on-air personalities, did a Twitter show every single night. Once all the matches were done, our post-game coverage was over, she did, a Twitter-only program every single day covering, that day's action. We also give viewers a chance, on their social platforms to see different views of the field and of a match. So we have a social platform called a social campaign called Fox Field Pass. So if you were watching Sunday's match, the Galaxy played Seattle, and if you were watching online on Instagram, you could see Zlatan's PK from the corner on the pitch from a cell phone. And you can see kind of the behind the scenes behind our sideline reporter as she went around the match and interviewed Zlatan post-game. They went inside the booth to see our on-air talent as they're calling the match. So we find ways to let viewers see kind of what we're doing kind of in the background and what our perspective is on the game. For our other football, we also cover American football, the NFL, very heavily. And we often do on our Sunday pregame show, we do a thing called On the Bus and At the Stadium. And we have this digital feature through a Fox platform called Procast, and the football players are able to use their cell phone and videotape themselves when they're on the bus going to a game, when they're in the stadium, in the clubhouse, as everybody's giving their hype-up speeches, they're videotaping themselves. We don't have to send in a crew, we don't have to send in a camera. They videotape themselves, they send it to us, and we're able to show it on air. So it gives this behind-the-scenes view that the fans are craving. They want more. I think that's why they go to a Copa for content. They don't want just, the 90-minute, or in the case of NFL, 3-hour, match feed. They want more content, more viewership. So that for us is a great way to keep people coming to watch Fox, to be on their phone as they're watching us on television and complement the game feed.
Fantastic. Luis, I just have to ask you, in listening to Raquel, I know I'm going a little bit off script, but when I hear just, having worked with so many clubs, and you know the players obviously very intimately, how does that mechanic work? Because I think of a player in the mindset of getting ready for a game and then sort of filming and taping in the bus. Just, do you discuss these opportunities with your athletes, or just let it happen naturally? How does that kind of come to life?
Usually, football clubs are a little bit conservative in that approach. Obviously, now we cannot escape reality, but usually the football clubs are very protective of the content that the players create in a club context. So it's unusual. So mobile phones stay off the dressing room, or they try to. But no, you have no tradition of content in halftime. So football clubs have that, although they are more and more open, when it becomes the game, when the game is coming, all the club closes and focus on that game. So the idea of the clubs is to get their players to be as less distracted as anything else as possible, and just focus on the game.
That's fantastic.
So usually clubs are conservative approaching competition.
Perfect. Tom, Copa 90, voice of the fans. Obviously a totally opposite approach to everything that you do. And congratulations, your coverage of the World Cup was phenomenal, both on your own channels and in partnership with others. What would you say that you did for the World Cup? Was it football content, was it entertainment content, or something completely different?
I would say a combination of all three, really. Probably more on the entertainment and something completely different. As mentioned, we don't have rights, so everything we did had to be really either along one of three types of content. Documentary content, so trying to tell stories and bring interest to the World Cup around nations or fan cultures or teams that people didn't know a huge amount about. We had a daily comedy show on Snapchat, which was just fast turnaround, you know, kind of riffing off the day's events. And then probably one of the things I was most proud of was we did a show called the World Cup for Free. And the thinking behind the World Cup for Free was we'd been told in the weeks and months leading up to the tournament that Russians were unfriendly, that the British media in particular was saying don't go there. The British government was giving Foreign Office warnings to fans and media outlets like us to say don't go. So we decided that we would obviously ignore all those warnings, and we sent one of our talent with a producer to basically live in Russia for free with Russian fans wherever they were. So we used social media to connect him to whatever was going on in Russia, and he had 60 days of the time of his life showing the world, we felt, that Russian hospitality, Russian fans, and the way that the Russian people adopted and embraced not just the tournament but other cultures and visiting fans, that we felt that was a sort of almost an important political point to be making against this sort of toxic backdrop of don't go to Russia or else you're going to get killed. It was quite the opposite. In Martino's case, it was go to Russia, don't spend any money and be looked after by, you know, lovely groups of people all over the country. So yeah, a combination of the above.
Fantastic.
I would say we did something similar, and I agree. At Fox, we did throughout the tournament. National Geographic is one of our sister companies, and so we did similar short features where we had, you know, a Russian-born, you know, Nat Geo correspondent went throughout the country and gave people another perspective, another view on all these different parts of Russia. Because to us, we viewed them as the next team. You know, Russia as a country was also a team for us outside of the team on the field. And showing the American viewer, you know, all these different facets of Russia that we don't very often see. And we think as a company, and I'm sure you guys do similar, we try to, especially with a tournament like the World Cup, not just having American voices. So especially this year, since we didn't have an American team in the tournament, it was very helpful to have all of these different voices from around the world. We had 2 Russian-based talent, and I think being able to tell those stories outside of just that 90-minute game, you know, gives people more perspective and more interest.
We should have this conversation maybe not on stage and not 2 months after a World Cup, because we could have
done a lot together.
We've talked a lot about the content and the philosophy and the approach. Now I want to talk a little bit about audience. I think a lot of you have probably seen the stat that Real Madrid, with 110 million Facebook fans, only 3% of those are in Spain. Luis, we were talking earlier, I brought up a great point about how he thinks about the content possibilities in America and Asia and the Middle East, because it's very hard to get athletes and clubs and organizations to travel there, so fans can only connect through content. How are you thinking about your approach to the audience globally and everything that you do creating content?
I think that's that is one of the biggest challenges in football, especially for clubs. If you look, the biggest players have a bigger fan base than the clubs, which could be a little bit strange, but people feel connected to their stars, to their idols. And I think one of the biggest challenges for the clubs all over Europe is changing a little bit the mindset that they are not only speaking to their core fans, people that are born and die with the same club and really have the passion, but there are a lot of away fans that really like the club at some point, and there the players are key on it, and so, but they also change their preferences. We used to use the example of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls in the NBA. Everybody in Europe loved the Bulls when Michael Jordan played there. Now people follow where the stars are, and now recently it's not an example. It's there. So you've seen the increase of the Juventus social media fan base with the fact of signing Ronaldo. So you look, football clubs' revenues are getting higher and higher, but they are small companies compared to their reach and to their popularity and their presence in the biggest sport in a globalized world. So probably the clubs and the players as well have to find a way of better engaging and better communicating with their fans who cannot be part of the actual experience of watching a game or having a daily newspaper that speak about sports every day. So I think the challenge is that the way clubs and players learn how to make those fans feel part of the game and really feel part of the community, their dimension can significantly boost.
Right.
In my point of view.
Fantastic. Raquel, you come from the U.S., but you know a little bit about football. What's your perspective?
Well, I would say, for us, I think in the U.S., the international players are the ones that seem to resonate quite a bit with the market in the U.S. But I think, with a tournament like the World Cup for our fan base, and as a company where, unlike Copa, we are limited by a rights agreement that limits where we can show our content and where we can show the game. So we are, limited to the U.S. For us, it's how do we bring in these international players and international voices to help tell the stories of these clubs as we, the sport of football is continuing to grow in the U.S. market exponentially. And I think having a World Cup coming to the U.S. in 26 is a huge opportunity for our market and for the continued growth. So for us, it's how do we find these other voices? So like I said, this summer we had, British talent, German talent, Russian talent, Mexican talent. So talent from all around the world that can bring different perspectives to the viewer so they can learn about the other clubs. I think, while we always hope to have a U.S. team in a tournament, I think, one thing we saw this past summer were, our ratings were amazing. And I think it's because we were able to tell these really great stories around these big international stars and their countries and their teams, and educate the U.S. fans about those clubs. And I think looking forward to the Women's World Cup next summer, where, we'll hopefully have, a U.S. women's team, but can continue to bring in these international voices to continue to kind of spread, the perspective and educate our fan base a bit more.
Great. Tom, you just opened in China. You guys are becoming a global network of football. Why don't you end on your thoughts on the same question?
Well, I think first and foremost for us and, clearly for a lot of people in this room, it's all about the fans. Football is nothing without fans, which was a Jock Stein quote way back. And it's the same for Copa 90, which is we are nothing without our fans. So everything that we do from our sort of data analytics to work out who is a passing viewer and who is a actual advocate, an engager, a sharer of our content, who's going to come to our clubhouse in Moscow and actually buy a t-shirt, drink our beer and turn up, I suppose, for Copa 90. That's been the biggest drive in 2018 to really work out from those vanity metrics of the billions of views that a lot of Facebook publishers will publish. That's just sort of, for us, that's kind of dancing in the traffic. Who are the people that actually care about you and care about you as a brand? So speaking of China, we had a young lad who wrote to us saying about a year ago how he wanted to translate all of our content for the Chinese market. And he's shortly becoming a full-time member of our team. But we did a film about casual culture in the UK, and that film got translated and put out on the Chinese networks. And now there's a group of 16 Beijing fans that all walk around in Stone Island and Fred Perry shirts, which was a result of that film. And it's that level of fandom and those indicators around fandom that we're most interested in, rather than the big vanity metrics.
Fantastic. We just have a few minutes left, so last question. Raquel, I know you mentioned earlier, none of us can predict the future, but I think we should just end with a few minutes left. Just a few things that you're thinking about towards the future as you think about the intersection of entertainment and football.
I think given how media is these days, where media is not just a television screen, and so we look at television just being how you access our content across all these different devices, and having social media and having athletes who want to be a part of this industry, I think it provides a lot of opportunity for great content, whether it's a big platform like Fox and all of its different kind of ancillary, pieces of the puzzle, or a Copa, where, you have these athletes that can now go and create their own content, and it's now finding the right fit for them. And whether it's a big Fox, whether it's a Copa that's kind of, shaking the game up a little bit by giving people this alternative place to go watch content, I think it'll be a really interesting time over the next few years to see kind of where the athletes go and where they find kind of their foothold.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, Luis, you're just hearing everyone say how much they love and want your athletes and your clients. It's got to be, you're thinking about the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, yes. The way I see for the clients and for the fans, and this is a little bit, is that you have something, if you see the future, I think this has to be addressed. So you have, in Spain, you have 2 teams who always win. In France, you have 1. In Italy, you have 1. In Germany, you have 1. So you have teams that are probably too strong for their own leagues, and you have, and then they put all their coins into one competition that it's, in the end of the day, a small competition. So you have the cases of having teams that win both the league and the cup of their own countries, and has an unsuccessful season. I don't know if it lasts long. So if you see the future, I think probably a faraway future will be, create a series of divisions, even with the best teams of other continents, where the competition would be the best playing with the best for more often. So that would excite brands and create an audience. But I think that's a future very far ahead from where we are now.
Absolutely. Tom, not all teams are created equal, but all fans are created equal. So how do you see the future from your perspective, embracing fans?
Very simply, it's not about technology. It's about the other half of the world's population, which is the women's game and female fans and women within the game. I think if this sport continues to call itself the global game, then it has to fully embrace the gender diversity that is sitting right in front of it. I think the watershed moment of the Women's World Cup next year needs to be fully embraced by media, talent companies, and the games associations and federations. There are absolute rock stars of role models just waiting to be discovered that I think kind of media and the game's power brokers have simply ignored up to now, and we need to give them a platform, champion them, and show that our sons and daughters have people to look up to, not just in the men's game.
Great. Tom, Raquel, Luis, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. Thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.